yn Dynefwr Assembly Candidate, ymgeisydd cynulliad, dwyrin cyfyrddin a Dynefwr, Adam Price.
Mae'n hyfryd i fod gytre. Gytre yng Nghymru, gytre gyda'r Plaid, gytre am byth, a gytre I bwrpas. It's good to be home. It feels as if I've been on something of an extended gap year, which somehow turned into 5. 2 of those years I spent in an American university. Now, universities like monasteries and prisons are places where you can do a lot of thinking, though admittedly there's more in the way of distractions perhaps, which is why we love coming to conference in this university town of Aberystwyth. When I was away, I did a lot of thinking about Wales. Simon Bolivar, the great South American, the liberator, who fought and won independence not for 1 country but 3. Now that's ambition for you. Once said this: to understand a revolution, you have to experience it very close and judge it from afar. So I took his advice and moved to Boston, not to understand a revolution, but something equally as momentous for our small nation, the prospects and possibilities of Welsh devolution. I focused most of my energy on takeaways. I don't mean late-night fast food to get me through an essay crisis. In America, takeaways are the key insights that you glean from a book, a lecture, or a conversation. And for me, the greatest insight of all was this: leadership, true leadership, is about helping people deal with the challenge of change. Without leadership, we as a society cannot progress. We stand still. We stagnate. The poor quality of our politics in Wales at the moment eventually feeds through into the quality of all of our lives. As fathers and sons, as mothers and daughters, we can ignore, but we can't escape the community that binds us. The limits of its ambitions are the horizons of our hope, just as the possibilities of tomorrow are set by the decisions of today. So a land without leaders soon becomes a desert where the future cannot grow. In 1999, this felt like a young country, didn't it? It was a small country that dared to have big dreams. In Carmarthenshire, the irrepressible Roderick Glyn Thomas prized Carmarthenshire away from a Labour Party that had ruled us as a county without a break for 20 years. But in 1999, not even we, in our wildest dreams, expected Helen to win in Llanelli, and Geraint in the Rhondda, and Gareth in Aberconwy, and Brian in Islwyn. The people of Wales surprised us and probably surprised themselves. That we could do this. That we could decide for ourselves. In 1999, we even outshone the SNP. Within a year, we had brought down a First Minister. We should have probably gone one further and put one forward ourselves. The greatest First Minister that Wales never had, David Wigley. Next year, it's Wales that will have been 20 years in Labour, and new Wales dying to be born, to thrive, to prosper and to grow. How well is this Wales doing? Not an unreasonable question to ask of the Welsh Government. Well, let's judge Labour by the yardstick that matters, those fundamental measures of well-being. How well we learn, live and earn. Education is an area where we might have expected would flourish under devolution. Wales has a long history as a pioneer. That was no accident. Necessity was for us the grandmother of invention. We were a country beset by poverty, with no government of our own on which to call. So we created a better future for our children through our own collective efforts. Think of Griffith Jones, an 18th century vicar in Carmarthenshire with no resources to draw upon other than his own love of learning, but who created out of it the world's first successful programme of mass adult literacy, teaching 150,000 people to read and attracting the interest of international observers from as far afield as Catherine the Great of Russia. In 1889, the Welsh Intermediate Education Act saw the creation of joint education committees, the forerunners of local education authorities, a full 13 years before England. We were the first country to build a publicly funded system of school inspection, the first to see the need for a vocational curriculum to complement the grammar schools. We were the first to create a comprehensive school, and here in Aberystwyth we built an university with the pennies of the poor. That legacy of educational innovation lived on throughout the second half of the 20th century. So despite a crushing burden of poverty in Wales, by the dawn of devolution, we had a record of pupil achievement at 15 years of age, equal to anything that England's better funded schools could boast. Since then, what have we seen? Our educational standing has gone down globally, and in these islands gone down and down. So much so that a former Welsh education minister, soon to be ex-AM for the Rhondda, was forced to admit a systemic crisis. When Labour talks about closing the attainment gap between England and Wales, remember this: the gap is a gap that they themselves created. The real underachievers in Wales are not students, they're not teachers. It's the Labour Party that has failed an entire generation of our young people. They failed the test. They failed the test of leadership, and now it's time for real change. You know, the most damning evidence of all is the slide in the rankings internationally of Welsh 15-year-olds' abilities in reading, maths and science. Wales has been tested 3 times since 2006, and we've slid ever further down those league tables, well below the international average. Can we as a country, a small country that excels in so many fields, in the top 10 in rugby and soccer, really content ourselves with 41st in reading and 43rd in maths? The OECD said in an official report to the Welsh Government that the Welsh education system is failing at both ends of the ability spectrum, with a high proportion of low performers and a low proportion of high performers. In other words, in a few years, Wales has gone from leader to laggard. And if the Welsh Government was subject to the kind of assessment that schools and local education authorities are subjected to, then it would be education ministers in the Welsh Government who would long ago have been placed in special measures. As the birthplace of the NHS, health is also an area in which we might have expected to excel under devolution. The picture here, however, is every bit as grim. The gold standard in comparing health systems worldwide is avoidable deaths. Those deaths that could be prevented with adequate healthcare and the right public health policies. In Wales, the proportion of avoidable deaths overall remains significantly higher than in England. If Wales had kept pace in cutting preventable mortality in recent years with the region in England with the most similar health profile, the northeast of England, then more than 800 people in Wales every year would avoid unnecessary premature deaths with all the heartache that entails. It amounts to thousands of avoidable deaths over the course of the last decade and a half. There are people who we knew and loved that would be with us in this room now, and many more at home, if it wasn't for the cruel postcode lottery that we are faced with in terms of life and death in Wales at the moment. And the most chronic condition that we face, the most chronic condition of all, is the lack of leadership that we're currently having under Labour. NHS waiting times in Wales are a stain on the reputation of a nation that has always put the weak and vulnerable at the front of the queue. By the end of July of this year, 27,313 patients, people, fathers, sons, mothers, daughters, had been waiting more than 36 weeks for their treatment, the highest number on record ever, an almost fourfold increase since 2011. Labour dismisses this as Daily Mail propaganda. You can almost see the First Minister leaning on his lectern to lecture us. How out of touch, how arrogant can you be? This isn't Tory propaganda. It's the widely respected Nuffield Foundation who confirmed last year that waiting times for hip and knee replacements in Wales were on average 100 days longer than in England or Scotland. It's the Wales Audit Office that showed us this year that the average patient in Wales waits 5 to 6 weeks longer than in England, and those waiting the longest wait 3.5 months more. Can all these bodies, these authorities, be wrong, and our perennially satisfied First Minister be the one that is always and everywhere right? On the economy, there's not much room for argument, is there? Labour promised us in 1997 that there would be a devolution dividend. We've had the very opposite. Relative to the EU, compared to the UK, we're worse off now than we were then, down from 85% of European average income in 2000 to 74% now, down from 74% of the UK average to 72% now. The payback for Welsh voters for their 20-year-long loyalty to Labour has been a negative return on their investment. Maybe it's time we change the fund manager. And let's remember this. Behind these numbers, these statistics, lies a very human cost. Reduced earnings, lower grades, shortened lives. It's difficult, isn't it, not to be angry? And yes, I want to turn apathy in Wales, that sense of passive resignations that so many of our people feel that this is as good as it gets. I want to turn that into anger. First into anger, and then into hope. Wyt ti'n fodlon ar dy Gymru, ar waelod pob tabl? Wyt ti'n fodlon ar dy Gymru yn gwastraffu ei photensial? Wyt ti'n fodlon ar dy Gymru yn colli ei bri? Nag ydyn, wrth gwrs. Devolution under Labour has failed, and we are the ones to fix it. The reasons for the failure is obvious. By the time of next year's Assembly elections, the Labour Party will have governed Wales at a national level for an unbroken 19 years. This makes it the longest-serving administration of any country in the whole of the European Union. It's not hard to see why that might be a problem. Every democracy needs the real chance of change, the pendulum swing of an alternative government, bringing with it new ideas and new leadership, the lifeblood of renewal. The opposite is stasis, inertia, fatigue, croeso I Gymru. Even the smartest of single-party hegemonies eventually run out of steam. Starved of the oxygen of new ideas, dominant parties become sclerotic, an ugly word for an ugly phenomenon, the furring of the arteries of the political system. I don't think it's uncharitable or sectarian to suggest that we are long past that point in Wales. The problem has not been a lack of ambition. The targets that have been set from time to time have been bold and laudable, achieving an average income of at least 90% of the UK average by 2010, being among the top 8 European countries for cancer survival by 2015, or the top 20 worldwide in education by next year. The problem was not the aim, but the lack of the vision, the guts, and the leadership necessary to achieve them. When ministers and priorities changed, the targets were quietly dropped. Those with a sentimental attachment to the Labour Party may hold out hope that it will be possible to renew Welsh Labour from within. I wish them luck, but all the evidence suggests parties only ever renew themselves in opposition. A country's only hope for renewal after decades of decline is not a change in the leadership of a party, it's a change in the party of leadership. I like Jeremy Corbyn. In Parliament, he was a personal and political friend. It's good to hear that he's about to issue a long-awaited apology because of Labour's deception over Iraq. But surely it's not Jeremy that should be apologising, but the Shadow Defence Secretary and Shadow Foreign Secretary he's appointed to his cabinet who approved these illegal wars, or a Shadow Secretary of State for Wales who voted 4 times against an inquiry into them. Progress on the path to redemption should always be celebrated, of course. 10 years ago, Labour's cabinet was led by war criminals. Now they just have Lord Falconer Thurton, a war criminals advocate, apologist and friend. A perfect choice for Shadow Justice Secretary, the man who convinced the then Attorney General to change his legal advice over the war. I say this to Jeremy in comradely fashion. I wish him luck in England. England needs rescuing from the forces of conservatism that have engulfed it. But Wales is another country with its own politics and its own problems. And the top of that very long list is the failure of your party. The moment you pass through that Severn tunnel on your monthly procession through Wales, you are not the head of an anti-establishment party. Your backward-looking, power-driven, tribalist Labour Party is the very essence of the political establishment in Wales. You are the status quo. It's us in this party who are the change. Even the Labour Party, of course, agrees that Labour has left Wales in a shambles. Anne Clwyd says the Welsh NHS is in dire crisis. Paul Murphy says value schools are no longer producing the kind of good quality Oxbridge applicants they did when he was a scholarship boy. You see, on the perpetual training ground of Welsh democracy, Labour doesn't just field the government first 15, it thinks it should provide the opposition as well. And Carwyn stands there in the middle, proud with his whistle, ready to run off the field as soon as things turn nasty. Wyt ti'n fodlon ar dy Gymru? Is this really as good as our Wales will ever get? I believe all of us in Wales, in our heart of hearts, know. We know, journalists know, civil servants know, The people of Wales know that we need to change our country. And to change our country, we first need to change the government of our country. That's the change we need in May. Nothing would shake up this lazy, indefensible, unforgivable complacency of our Welsh political establishment more than these 4 simple words. First Minister Leanne Wood. If you think that this is the stuff of dreams, then take a look at Alberta in Canada, which in May this year saw a 44-year unbroken term of office by the Conservatives overturned by a new Democratic Party caucus that went from 4 seats to 53. Or Justin Trudeau's party that went from 3rd to 1st place, from 19 to 39%, to form a government in Ottawa this past week. Change, my friends, sometimes comes like an avalanche. The tipping point is now. The new leadership Wales needs is ready. It's willing. It's able. The people of Wales are waiting. Mae Cymru ar ei hymdaith. Plaid Cymru, Wales Party, let's go.